general perspective, someone looking at it from Uganda, Tanzania?
No, anything about the East African community, or presently my team is in Tanzania and they are executing that. So if the agreement that will come out of that will inform the final amendment that will take to the National Assembly. You know, we have to come together as East African community. I'm supposed to be Tanzania on 15th. Unfortunately, I'll be held up. But my team will be there so that they agree on the final tariffs and non-tariff issues that will be discussed. On the issue of pay as you earn, the simulation is presently being done. Actually, we have some reports. What we were checking was, you know, there are so many things happening at the same time. Remember, there's a war in the Middle East. We are looking at the impact of that war. Already, we have reduced the VAT on petroleum products. We don't know for how long. So that is something we must factor in our revenue projections. We are also looking at the overall impact on the economy. But there are reforms that we have also implemented at the Kenya Revenue Authority, particularly targeting personal income tax. We wanted the personal income to broaden the base for personal income tax to be to increase, and then that would help us to compensate for the loss in this pay as you earn. However, we are in a conversation, and we have agreed with the head of state that this is an amendment that we may carry, even regardless of the impact it will have on our revenue, because we feel it is important for the economy. So chances are that very high that these amendments will be carried in this finance bill, not waiting for tax laws amendment. We were just watching, because, you know, we have up to June to be able to conclude. So we were doing simulations, assessing, and looking at the records from Kenya Revenue Authority. Remember, Kenya Revenue Authority told us that the impact of personal income tax reforms would be realized from March, April, May. So we are trying to look at those figures just to see the final impact. But I will tell you that consideration is being made to include this adjustment in this bill, not tax laws amendment bill coming later. So I don't know whether you found the other provision. As you look for it, Bloomberg, did I see your hand?
Yes.
Okay, you go first. Yes.
Just a quick rider on Kefa's question. You've talked about a simulation that could lead to a 35 billion loss in revenue. Could you just tell us what that looks like?
How does it look like, namna gani?
In terms of, so.
You know, I'm not getting you.
Okay.
How does it look like? 35 billion just looks like 35 billion. I'm wondering how it...
In terms of that simulation...
You see, we are proposing that the tax allowable amount, where we have the tax relief. Yeah. If you're earning up to 24,000, you pay zero tax, because the tax relief is equal to the tax payable. Now we are saying we wanted to move that to 30,000 and zero rate it. Say from 1 shilling, because no one earns 0 shilling, from 1 shilling to 30,000, you pay 0%. Then from 30,000 to 50,000, you pay at 25,000. Yet today, from 38,800 to above 50,000, you pay at 30%. So that's a reduction of 5%. From 24 to 30,000 is also a reduction to 0. Now all that compounded gives a budget whole, meaning we are going to collect less by 35 billion shillings. That is the assessment that my team has worked on. So we are looking at, if that is the case, where do we get revenue to compensate for this? Or what do we do? Do we cut expenditure to compensate? Because you must have a balancing effect. Now, our initial projection was to use the increased revenue collection from personal income tax out of the reforms that we are carrying out at the Kenya Revenue Authority to compensate for this. As a matter of fact, chances are that if the reforms bear fruit, we will collect much more from personal income tax, which will directly compensate this. The other area is the rental income tax. So those are the things that we are working on, but that may not stop us from implementing or actualizing that proposal that we have announced publicly in terms of adjusting the tax rates. Yes. Yes, you, then I come to you.
Yes, Waziri, the projection is to raise about 120 billion shillings from these tax proposals. How confident are you that you will yield this? Because previously, Treasury has projected revenue that it has not been able to raise, and down the line, the budget has to be very confident.
Yeah, a bit more realistic. First, there is the bit that we are expecting to give some tax amnesty in the course of the year. That should give us about 30 billion in revenue. And then we have also made some adjustments here and there, especially on tax administrative procedures. That should give us that yield. Besides that, there is the personal income tax that I've talked about. That is an area that we think would give us much more than even what we are projecting. So we are working very hard to make sure that the personal income tax, the reforms that we are carrying out, realizes the full potential on personal income tax and rental income tax. With that, we should be good in terms of our projections. However, I also want to point out that we have revised our projection downwards. If you looked at the numbers that we are now putting across for revenue projection. Why? Because of the current development. Clearly, we can see there is the external shock that is going to affect us. And that is why the budget deficit has risen to 5.3% from the earlier projected 4.7. It's not out of nothing. The expenditure has not really risen much. The expenditure is in the region that we took to Parliament for with budget policy statement. But the revenue has come down, and that is why the deficit has gone a little high. Yes?
I think you've partly answered one of my questions.
And partly not answered. Yes.
Yes.
So ask the part that I will not answer.
Now, the other question is, should the revenue underperform again in the next financial year, what measure would you be having? Will it be more on the deeper cuts on the spending side, more borrowing, or